at the Victorian period, Edwardian period, which is when George and Margaret were here entertaining, this would have been sort of where the women retired after dinner. There would have been music here. They would have discussed books of the day, events that were happening. They would have followed womanly pursuits. And that's very important to remember as we move down the hallway. The original house ended here with these double doors, and then when they did the 1904-1906 addition, they built this west hallway mostly to support the additional bedrooms that they built upstairs and to add the large room that we're going to walk into next.
Traipse down the hallway westward, and that'll take you to what folks nowadays would call a man cave.
Here we are in the gun room game room. And you see two more great chandeliers hanging in front of you, two more Tiffany lampshades. They're known as tortoise-back lampshades, and they were not designed for the house here on Cumberland Island as such, but were designed for the installation. So we know that they were ordered specifically for this house. They are two of a kind, meaning that they do match each other, but we do see the tortoise-back shells used in other Tiffany lamps, so they do occur elsewhere. However, these are the only two known to exist that are fully of the tortoise-back shells. We are standing in what Margaret requested to be sort of the man cave of Cumberland Island's plum orchard. She wanted a room to be very dark, very masculine, so that's why the paneling is very dark. The ceiling is much lower than many other rooms in the house, and it has a darker ceiling to it as well. Both cabinets on either side are cabinets where they stored guns and ammunition, so hence the gun room part of the name. And then the men would have retired here after dinner to play games, card games. At one point in time there was actually a pool table in here, and there's a family member who very fondly reminisces about this smelling of gun oil and bourbon. So we know that there was a little bit of good times going on here. So truly, we talk about the man cave as sort of a new thing, but it happened here 100 years ago.
One craftsman was so proud of his handiwork, he even left behind his signature and date, which was uncovered during restorations. Our tour of Plum Orchard Mansion continues after these messages in this hour-long special edition of Todd Wilson's Georgia Journal. We'll be right back in part 2 of our visit to Cumberland Island National Seashore. Welcome back to Todd Wilson's Georgia Journal as we're trekking through this guided tour of an amazing estate over 100 years old, the Plum Orchard Mansion, one of the Carnegie holdings at one time, now a part of our National Park System. Guided tours being offered now by the National Park Service, and we have the privilege of giving you a behind-the-scenes look in this exclusive tour of the Plum Orchard Estate. Upstairs, one finds bedrooms, closets, and a 200-foot-long hallway connecting them.
Here we are in Margaret and George's master bedroom. And again, most of the furniture that you see here are actually pieces that came from Dungeness. Partially, again, when we talked earlier, because the family had mothballed Dungeness and moved many pieces of furniture out of Dungeness. Also because there's a very unique story behind Margaret and George and their time here. George himself dies in 1921 and leaves Plum Orchard and all of his belongings then to his wife, Margaret. By 1924, Margaret remarries and decides that she's going to surrender all of her rights to be the mistress of Plum Orchard. By right, all of the furniture in Plum Orchard had been hers. It was her wedding gift. So she takes all of the furniture that's hers out of Plum Orchard and auctions it off, so leaving behind the furniture from Dungeness. So most of the pieces of furniture that we're seeing today either belong to the family because they were from Dungeness, or they belong to George's younger sister, Nancy, who then becomes the new mistress of Plum Orchard and remains here with her husband, Dr. Marius Johnston, until they donate Plum Orchard to the National Park Service in 1972, along with 16 acres, and that becomes Cumberland Island National Seashore. You know, you think about how wood shrinks and swells, and especially here in the heat and humidity and in a house that's not climate controlled, and it's not over 100 years, it has not buckled.
We take modern conveniences for granted nowadays. However, way back then, the Carnegies had the right idea, even when it comes to plumbing.
Now we are standing in the master bathroom for George and Margaret. And this bathroom was actually built as part of the 1904-1906 edition. And I love to say when I bring people into this bathroom that everything old is new again. You can walk into any, and most people can name them. You can walk into any high-end store that does bathroom fixtures, and you can see the rain head shower, the turn knob faucets, the metal wire baskets, and the glass shelf over the sink, and buy those things today. Hard to imagine when they put these in 100 years ago and they were cutting edge technology that we would be going back to these things today. The sink is a porcelain sink. The tub is a very nice porcelain tub. The steam heated towel rack. The technology to make all of these things work is just an incredible technology, and incredible to think about when at the turn of the century it was more common for people to have telephones than running water for bathrooms in their house. And then here we are in Miss Lucy's dressing room. Of course, she had a huge dressing room because she would change clothes many times throughout the day because no central heat and no central air. Lots of layers and lots of reasons to change clothes because they would go to the beach, they would go hunting, and of course they would dress for tea and for dinner. So here we have a model of an outfit that would have been worn in the Edwardian period, and right next to it, the fainting couch. And that's because it would have been common for women of the day to not necessarily faint, but to need to lay down to get the corsets tight and to get all of their layers on to get ready for the day.
Among the 22,000 square feet, plenty of closets, some which still hold fashions of the day. Moving on eastward, one comes in to the man's closet.
So here we are actually in George's closet. You know, Margaret had her own closet and George had his closet, which is actually kind of odd when you think about houses that are built at the turn of the century, and even up until about the 1940s. Usually they did not have a lot of closet space. However, Plum Orchard has plenty of closet space. So you have drawers that slide in and out, so personal effects could be kept. And then if you step over here, there are boxes for shoes. Tall ones for riding boots, short ones for dress shoes.
Other closets located in the upstairs section of Plum were made of cedar, and there were other closet space dedicated specifically for linens.
So this is the linen closet for Plum Orchard, and it would have held all of the towels, bed sheets, tablecloths needed to keep the house going for all of the guests that came to see George and Margaret, in addition to all the drawers and cabinets that you see on the left side of the wall. There are also cabinets on the right side as well. And of course you needed the shelf to fold everything when it came out of the laundry. Some of the additional rooms that you see across the hallway are extra closets. There's actually a walk-in cedar closet, master bathroom. Again, you'll notice the clawfoot tub, the heated steam rack for the towels, and the ornate tile, and the gold filigree around the tub and the tile. There's a couple of closets that we have where the rods are much higher up, which is why they have these longer posts on them. And so you could put suit coats and riding coats on them and hang them up so they could hang full length, and then you could still reach to take the hangers off the rod.
The Carnegie children led a privileged life as well. They even had a larger-than-life, opulent home for their dolls.
Now we're in the nursery, and we're looking at the dollhouse. And this was one of the other objects that was donated to the Park Service by the Johnston family. The story that goes along with the dollhouse is that it actually resembles the Carnegie family house in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Very many of the Carnegie family children that are alive today remember playing with the dollhouse. It was very fond memories are associated with this great house.
There are also parallel access where servants would roam. This allows the family and guests to have their privacy. The family would have easy contact with their staff through an annunciator. Ranger Tyler explains.
So what I have here in my hand is an annunciator cord, and we've probably seen a few of these in the background as we've been walking through. And this was a way for the family members to call for servants. They would press the button, and then downstairs in the butler's pantry, there's an annunciator call box. And we'll take a look at that when we get downstairs, but it has some numbers and some arrows. The arrows would spin, the bell would ring, and then servants would know where they needed to go.
Entertaining a large extended family and guests was also quite the undertaking. First off, plenty of plates and dinnerware would be used.
We're standing in the butler's pantry, and the butler's pantry would have been the place where the food came from the kitchen to be ready to be plated, and then they would go through the door into the dining room or through the doors behind me out onto the veranda for parties and breakfast meals that were not so formal. The cabinets held 420 pieces of china. The drawers held all of the silverware and the serving pieces, and meals were grand affairs here at Plum Orchard.
The menus were also carefully planned. Some original handwritten examples are still on display, which can tempt the palates of visitors today. The kitchen and large pantry areas are expansive as the rest of Plum. It's easy to imagine the fresh vegetables and fruits being washed in the large sink.
Here we have the pink Tennessee marble sink. This was put in during the 1904, 6, and 7 edition when they extended the kitchen and butler's pantry to make the east side of the house more symmetrical. It was used for everyday servings and doing dishes. Up here above the wall, we have the great annunciator box that we talked about earlier. So when family members would push that little button, the arrow would spin, the bell would ring, and the servants knew which button went with which number to which room. And a great system, because many of the servants here at Plum Orchard at the turn of the century would have been immigrants that would not have English as their first language. It was very possible that they would have been illiterate and may not have been able to read or would not have had English as their first language. So this was a great system to communicate, and they would have known where to go by the arrow spinning, the bell ringing, and the number.
and the staff and chefs busying themselves around what initially was a wood-burning stove.
So we're now standing in the kitchen, and the last piece of restoration we need to do to the house is to repair the kitchen and the floor. We had some termite damage, and so you'll notice that the floor is slumping. This would have been the central location for a lot of the servants' activity. And check out that stove. I mean, it's such a great stove. And when it was first installed, it was a wood-burning stove, so they would have cooked all of their meals over wood, and then it was later converted to coal. And again, you know, to cook a meal over coal, it was a very hot prospect. But the stove and the kitchen sink are the originals to the house. It was initially a wood stove and then was converted to coal, and that's the stove that the workers would have cooked on to prepare the meals to go along with those 420 pieces of china. There was a pie safe and some more pantry space in the back part of the kitchen. It does wrap around the back side of the stove. On the other side of the stove, there's a pantry and, again, a smaller kitchen sink here. But when you take a look at the expanse of this room, the storage to the side, just to think about the activity that would have occurred here to keep a 106-room house and all of the guests happy and well-fed. I think this is probably the heart of where it all happened.
Recreation was important as well. An indoor swimming pool was built during the final addition to Plum Orchard. Now, it had no filtration system, but could be filled and emptied as needed.
The pool was filled again with the sulfur water from the naturally occurring well here on the grounds of Plum Orchard.
Since the water was spring water, it would have been pretty cold, and being in an enclosure, it would be very cold water. So I think folks would not probably linger for long periods of time in this cold water.
Also unique to Plum is its own indoor squash court with an elevated area for spectators.
And this is the only known squash court still in existence in the United States.
The Plum Orchard grounds were once appointed with gardens and flowers, but are still majestic, with towering palms and live oaks draped in Spanish moss. There, too, are opportunities to see wildlife. Horses graze, and in the nearby pond, alligators swim and bask, and birds roost. Well, the Park Service